You see here, kid? You gotta just go for it. Don't think about what comes after or what came before. You just gotta bend your knees, take a deep breath, and jump. And you might think, what if I fall? Well, what if you don't? What if you fly?
Switching command to internal.
From the Collaborative Studios, Open the Eye, where metaphysical, paranormal, and the unexplained meet. Open the Eye with Tanya Tyler.
In October 1959, CBS premiered The Twilight Zone. It was a fantasy, science fiction, horror, and paranormal show. It ran for 5 seasons until 1964. After that, many other shows were launched similar to it. These were drama-based shows. Let's fast forward you to reality TV. In 2000, MTV launched Fear. It was the first of its kind. It took college kids to places like West Virginia State Penitentiary, and they tried to connect to the spirit world. In 2004, the Sci-Fi Channel saw an opening to connect not just to college kids, but to the average working class, ghost hunters. Jason and Grant, they were plumbers working for Roto-Rooter that did some investigation at night. To date, paranormal programming is the American staple. We are intrigued and fascinated by the spirit world. What happens? Where do they go? Who can see them? Who can't see them? What's intriguing to me is the people, everyday, average Joe Smo people that can see past the veil. Steve Shankle is a full-time hairdresser, done a little bit of energy work on the side. He is humble and has some crazy stories to share. Welcome, Steve. Let's start in the beginning when you connected to the spirit world.
I grew up in a little town outside of Nashville, and my parents had bought this old house. My dad was a contractor, and he redid most of the house except this one room that he didn't feel comfortable going in there. Of course, that was the room that I always wanted to play in. Could see the rafters and the ceiling and all that stuff, and it was just old boards, and the house was built in the late 1800s. When I would go up there and play, I would always see a man standing in the corner with a white jacket on and 2 women standing around him, and they would turn and look at me, and I would go tell my mom there's somebody in the attic, and she would come in and she was like, there's nobody there. And I said, well, they're standing right there. There's a man with a white coat on, and they keep turning and looking at me. And she said, there's nobody there. Then it went on to where I would start to hear babies crying. And I would say, Mama, there's babies in this house. I keep hearing babies crying as I got older. And I remember one Christmas I was at her house laying on the sofa, and we were laying and talking. I said, do you not hear that baby crying? It's screaming like it wants its mother. Do you not hear it? And she said, there's nobody, there's nothing in this house. Well, she had me checked out to make sure that I wasn't crazy, and I went through all kinds of therapy and stuff, and they couldn't find anything wrong with me.
How old were you when you moved in, and how old were you when you were starting to hear the babies?
I was probably 10, 11. I grew up in that house of childhood. And as I got older, I would still hear them, but they were louder. That was probably when I think I was in my 30s. The area that house was in was very low. It would flood a lot. And in 2010, Nashville and Tennessee had a major flood, and that house, my mom had to be boat rescued because the water she was sitting on the stairs when they came to get her. So that house had to be torn down. My mom got a new house and everything, and I finally said, Mama, what was going on with that house? And she said, well, I'll tell you. I never wanted to tell you because I didn't want to scare you guys as children. The man that lived in that house in the early 1900s, late 1800s, he ran an abortion clinic there, and for the girls in that area or women or whatever. And whenever he was performing these abortions, he would turn a certain light on outside, and they would come there. And I said, so that's the babies I was hearing crying? And she said, I guess so. So I said, all the time that you sent me to therapists and made me think I was nuts. Growing up also, like, being gay and having this, I don't know if you would say ability or whatever, it was very hard because you can't tell people about that. They either think you're crazy or that you're lying. With everything else that I had going on, that was just one more thing I didn't want to add to. when we would ride through going into town or whatever, I would look at a house, and I was like, there's a man there that has cancer. And she said, yeah, how did you know that? And I said, I can just feel it when I go by, and he's very, very ill. And then there was another situation where I was standing on my mom's front porch, and I said, did a man and two young boys just move in that house over there? And she said, yeah. And I said, well, he's sexually abusing those boys. And she said, don't start that mess. I don't want to know any of that. And keep all those thoughts to yourself. And she never understood it. And she's still alive today. And I will just get a feeling in my back, and I'll call her and say, does your lower back hurt today? And she's like, yeah, I think I slept wrong. And I said, I think you have a kidney infection. And so then it would get worse, and she would go to the doctor, and she would have a kidney infection.
Wow. When you were little, Steve, did you have any kind of mentor said, hey, this is kind of what you're experiencing, or anything?
No.
Okay.
No, that was the thing. I had to learn to deal with all this on my own. Very hard. Now, mind you, my grandmother, she had an ability where if people had like some kind of warts or something, they could come to her and she would rub them, and eventually they would, like within a few days, they would go away. You can Google it. It's on Google that some people have that ability and blah, blah, blah. My spirit guide is her. That's who I feel and I hear when I see and hear all this stuff.
Was your grandma alive when you were younger?
She passed when I was young.
Okay.
And then I just kind of pushed it all down. And if I met somebody and I shook their hand, I could get weird feelings from them if something was going on in their life or whatever. And I still would just push it down because I didn't really understand it. And I didn't know what was going on. I just knew that I was different, and that you hear about the Cleo or whatever her name was, and people would make fun of that. And I certainly didn't want to be that person.
I want to explore the childhood a little bit, because I feel like as you're going to school, there was some crazy stuff that probably happened as well.
School, I would know if someone was going to be like in some kind of accident.
In school, did you have a lot of friends that you were close to, or were you kind of more independent child and just kind of like a loner?
No, I was actually president of our student body. I was most fun to be with in my graduating class.
Most fun to be with. I love that, because you've got such a good personality. But yeah, that's awesome.
Well, thank you. Also, back to when I was living in Nashville, this ghost hunting society, my friend Tracy had told them about me, because one time her place was near a graveyard, and they just pushed my head, and my head went forward, and she said, are you having a seizure?
Who pushed your head? Some spirit?
The spirit or something, and something did. And then I heard this really loud hum, and I jumped back. And Tracy, you're probably going to think I'm crazy or I'm full of BS, but I am able to see things and hear things. And she's like, oh, my God, I'm into that. She was into the show Tap. It's on every channel or one of those. They were ghost hunters. So she had joined a ghost hunting society in Nashville. She said, why don't you come and go with it? I went, and of course, they want you to prove yourself. And I was able to tell some of them about some things that had happened to them in their homes and what their houses looked like, and I'd never been there. So we went to Louisville, Kentucky, to Waverly Hills. Have you ever heard of that?
No.
It's the craziest thing. It's a sanatorium, and it's 5 floors. It's empty, but it's supposedly one of the most haunted places in America.
Waverly Hills, okay.
You can go in. It's $100 a person, and you can. They open the gates at 11 o'clock at night, and they take you. There's a thing they call the body chute, but that's how they used to take the food in. It was like one of those little railroad carts, just a little bitty thing that they put food in, and they would go down the hill, and then they would put the food in groceries or whatever they were doing.
This was a sane asylum?
In a sanatorium. That was where they took people with TB.
Oh, crazy. Okay, my bad.
So there was so many people, I can't remember exactly because it's been 20 years or so since I went, but there was, I want to say 63,000 people died there.
Whoa.
Something like that. It was a lot. It was a lot. And there were so many people dying that they took that, the little cart, and would put the bodies in it and take it down, and they would put them in their mass graves. And a lot of people there were unidentified. And so with all that much death, you're going to have some kind of spirit presence. And so they wanted me to go with them. And, of course, I always had to be the first in the room. We would
Send Steve in. Let's see what he hears, sees, feels.
Right. So, and they would get in line behind me like a bunch of little ducks, and there's no electricity in the place, and it's pitch black. When you first go there, you have to sit and watch a video, and it tells you about the history of it and all this stuff. And then they divide you up into 5 groups, and one group gets to go on the first floor, then another group goes on the second floor, and so on. And then you're locked on those floors for an hour, and you can investigate it to see exactly what's going on. And they would tell you where they've had the most activity and all this stuff. So we called it the body chute, and the body chute is where that little railroad cart was. And you could see the moon, the reflection. It's like looking down a tunnel and how the light comes through, sort of thing. You could see the shape of someone and their body was, because there were stairs on the side of the track, and you could see their body going back and forth like they were coming up the stairs, and nobody could see that but me. And it kept getting closer and closer. And I told my friend Tracy, we need to go now.
You weren't feeling good about the spirit.
At all. There was a very negative energy around it, and it was coming at us. Her son stayed in the chute, and we heard him yell, and he had scratch marks on his face after that.
Oh.
Yeah. You should check their website out. They have a website about this whole thing. So then on the first floor, we got into a group, and we were all sitting around, and they were asking questions. And we had one of those radios that a EVP where it would, you turn it on and it'll go. And then we had the little lights that blinked on the wall so you could see if somebody would walk through. And they were always around me. They were always around me. And there was this one lady, she screamed, and she had scratches all down her legs. And I said, they don't want us in here. So we left and went into this part where they would put the bodies into one of those slabs and push them into the wall, like the morgue. And we put a voice-activated tape recorder on that and just left it sitting out. And then it slammed shut after we left, and you could hear, I kept going, do you hear them talking? They're telling us to get out. And so went room to room, and you could feel, or I could feel the energy, how heavy it was in certain spots. And people would get pushed and pinched, and it's a crazy place.
You felt a lot of dense, and you felt a lot of negative energy. Did any of them communicate any information to you, or did you get anything from them?
No, they basically just didn't want you around. None of them asked for help or anything, because I've never been able to, carry on a conversation with one. If you're interested in that kind of thing, that's a great place to go. And it was like the 5th floor nurse hung herself because she was having an affair with one of the doctors, and she got pregnant, and it's a very strange place.
Sounds really fun. I can't wait to get my face scratched up.
Yeah, right. That was on my top 10 things to do, too.
But for people that are intrigued with that kind of stuff, I mean, this would be it. For someone that can pick up a lot of energy like you, it was probably slightly overwhelming.
It was very overwhelming. And that's the thing, like, if I'm in a group of people, a large group of people, it can become overwhelming because the energies from them all, it gives me a migraine headache, and I have to, go outside sometimes. I don't really see everything that's going to happen to these people, whatever. It's just a lot. If I sit beside somebody, I can feel their energy, like if it's negative or not. And some people that are more open and not have walls up around themselves, I can tell things that's happened to them or that they've been through in their life, or just if they're feeling some heavy sadness. And that's kind of why I started doing some grief counseling, so I could try to help with those things.
So tell me a little bit about the grief counseling. That's interesting. You didn't physically go to grief counseling. You actually helped others.
I helped, yeah.
Okay.
Just because I know from my childhood and all the stuff that I went through with all this stuff, people just need somebody to just listen. And if they're going through some things in their past and they don't know how to deal with them, it's always good to have a little somebody just to help, So I would host groups on Tuesday nights at my house downtown, and people would come, and they didn't really know how to talk or what was going on. And I would just say, maybe you've had some stuff, which I knew, maybe you've had some stuff from your childhood that maybe your mom or your sister did or whatever. Let's just talk about that. Or, and they would just open up to me. And then most of mine were survivors of narcissistic relationship, and they'd never understood. I would say, well, maybe they're a lot like your dad, and knowing that they were, and you're trying to heal some stuff from your dad through this person, and it's just not the right person to heal this with, so let's do this. And that's the way I kind of use my abilities and at the same time. Does that make sense?
Steve, that's beautiful. What a beautiful human being to help others going through this. Because when you mentioned grief, I'm thinking, someone's died in their life, but it's not just relationship.
And abuse.
Yeah, abuse.
Abuse, yeah. And they're all like, well, I don't understand why he or she's treating me this way. And well, they've got some stuff from their childhood that they're trying to heal, and they're not ready to heal it, so they're going to put it on you. So let's do this to help you. And it would make a world of difference in their life. And it's always such a great feeling to know that, some of them would be on their very last, they didn't know what else to do. And me knowing that some of the things that they've been through, I could word it a certain way without it putting it directly on their shoulders.
How long did you do that for?
Probably maybe a year and a half.
Mm.
And like I said, I never told a lot of people here in town. I don't tell a lot of people about that or even the grief counseling, because I'm not that kind of person, and I don't want them to think that I'm some sideshow. That's why I started reading tarot cards, because I could, like I said, I could put it out. I could deal with it that way.
When did you start reading tarot cards, and how long did you do that for?
I probably started about 10 years ago, and I still read people now sometimes here. Some of my clients, my other business, they would say, could you read my cards? And I usually don't like to read people that I know, because they could think, well, I already told him that, And tarot cards are how I've helped with find the missing people with the police department.
You started doing tarot cards, and you started it in Fort Myers, Florida.
Right.
What do you get from the tarot card deck? How is that a good tool for you?
Well, the tarot cards, when they first come in, I give them the cards, and they shuffle them so they put their energy into it. I never touch the cards. I have them lay them out in a certain pattern, and I get them to flip the cards, flip a certain direction, and if they're upside down, to me, that means one thing. If they're if there's another direction, they mean one thing. But a lot of the cards, I can just look at them and actually see like a movement in the card. So the hangman, if he's a certain direction, that means that each person has their own definition of it. The hangman to me is a lot of emotional, they're bound up, or things are not, they don't know how to deal with certain things. And it's a possibility of a new beginning. So if it's facing me, it means one thing or another. But when I look at the card, I see there's like a little movie to it. I don't know how to explain that.
Okay.
And that's the direction I know that this person needs this. I don't know that I go by the book what tarot readings are to each person, but I just go by what I see as far as the movement and the feeling that I get off that card. Like a hangman could mean this, and a sword card could mean this, but I just see it as that individual, and I can feel the energy from that card is needing, they've got a new beginning coming, or they've got they have some childhood drama that's trying to come through, and then that's when I go to my ability to see that.
What do you call your abilities?
I've never named it, because I can look at people's pictures and tell them things about themselves. When I'm talking to somebody and I feel something that's going to happen to them, I'll tell them.
I want to jump back a little bit. You said that your grandmother is your spirit guide. She had some amazing abilities. The ability that you mentioned earlier was the rubbing the warts and then they would go away. What other abilities that you remember, or what has she shared with you? Can you talk a little bit about that?
She could read like playing cards, not necessarily tarot cards. I just remember my mom saying that when I told her I started reading tarot cards, she said, well, your grandmother could do that, but she never really elaborated because she didn't want to know anything. But she said she could read like the Ace of Diamonds, Ace of Diamonds or whatever, and she could tell things to people that way. And as far as like her, my spirit guide, I see and hear her when I'm stuck on something, or in my mind's eye. I don't physically see her, but I hear her voice, and she say, "Well, maybe you should try this, or tell them that." She's always around me, and she was taken from me in a very young age, and I kind of feel like that's the way of still being in my life.
This is something that is, in some sense, generational. Because your grandma...
Yeah, no, I don't know of anybody else that does, or if they do, they've never spoke of it.
Because your mom doesn't sound like she does. She doesn't talk about it.
Yeah, she don't want to know about it, because I think she thinks it's the devil.
Okay.
You know, we're from the South, so everything's the devil.
It's true. It's true. I was intrigued with you because you and I have crossed paths, but not really physically. We have a mutual friend,
Yeah.
Gina, who does radio in Florida, and I did radio in Florida, and that's how I know Gina. And then she always talks about you as her hairdresser. And so she said, he's got these amazing ghost stories. And you were telling me about all these spirits. I said, the veil's got to be thin on your side, because spirits, and somebody has a lot of encounters with spirits, there's usually another gift that they have behind, because the spirits can feel that because your vibration is higher.
Right.
Let's talk about the house that you went into.
When I had moved back to Nashville to help with our family farm and stuff. I decided I wanted to move back to Fort Myers. My friend Laura got me. She found this house for me in downtown, and that's where it all kind of came together. There was all kinds of spirits there, and all my abilities or whatever really kicked into high gear, and then people would come. Maybe I can read tarot cards and get this, whatever it is, it'll help me to release some of this, because if I see something's wrong with somebody, I have to tell them or it doesn't go away. Here, you need to tell them, you need to tell them, you need to tell them. Or they keep popping back into my life. Like they'll text me, or they'll just pop up at my house to say hello. So the universe keeps putting them back in my path. So if I don't tell them, it seems that keeps happening over and over and over. So I would tell them, you need to have this checked out. For example, now I'm back in Fort Myers, and I'm in my 40s at this time. I've kept all this under wraps and just tried to deal with it as best I could. My next-door neighbor, when I lived downtown, she worked for this printing company, and she had told her boss about me, and I've never met the woman, and she started texting me, and she said, I'm just really curious, is there anything, I've got some stuff going on, is there anything that you can tell me about it? And I said, well, just give me a little time. And when I do see a lot of stuff, it's right before I go to sleep. And so when I'm laying in bed and it's quiet, and that's when a lot of stuff can come to me. I just kind of closed my eyes, and I thought of her name, and then I kept seeing her in a two-piece bathing suit with a backdrop behind her, and she's holding a trophy. And I thought, what in the world is that? She texted this lady, and she said, well, this is what he sees. And she said, that's very interesting. Well, 2 weeks later, she texted me, and she's like, oh, my God, you can't believe this. I was in a fitness contest. I never wear a pink bathing suit, and the girl that was working with me got me to try a pink bathing suit, and I won second place.
No.
Yeah. Then she was like texting me all the time. She was like, I chipped a toenail. Does that mean anything? I was like, yeah, you need a part-time job. So, so she texted me one time, and she said, I really need your help. I said, please send me your picture and let me just look at you for a few minutes. And I said, I'll get back with you tomorrow. As I was looking at her picture, I could hear in my head, like, shortness of breath. And she said she'd been to all these doctors, and they can't find anything. So I kept, like, feeling like I couldn't get my breath, and I kept hearing short of breath and, like, workouts and short. So that I thought, well, she's having to cut her workout short because she can't breathe. But then I started hearing nodule. And then I heard left lung. And then I just felt that it was in the lower part of her lung. So I texted her the next morning, and I said, are you having trouble breathing? Are you, like, having to cut your workout short? She's like, oh, my God, I'm not even been able to work out much. I get on a treadmill and I have to stop. And I said, I just feel like now, I'm not a doctor. I don't know what this means or anything, but I keep feeling like you have a nodule in your lower left lung. And she said, well, I have a doctor's appointment in the morning. She was going to a new doctor that was a DO, and she said, I will tell him that. So like in a week, she texted me back, and she said, my doctor asked if you could work for him part-time because he found a nodule in my lower left lung.
Wow, Steve, that's amazing.
She was like, he wants to put you on the payroll.
That's very interesting. Okay, so I've sent you my photo. Do you have to take a couple seconds to quiet your mind or anything?
I just need to look into your eyes really well. Nice hair.
Hairdresser, don't touch the hair. Just came out of a ponytail.
Oh, did it? Okay, well, the first thing I really see, and you want me to just say it?
Yeah, I want you to rattle everything. Everything you see. Let's go for it. This is radio. I want to hear it all.
Okay. Well, the very first thing, as soon as I looked at your picture, I felt a very heavy sadness, and it feels like it came from your infancy into middle teenage years, like a really heavy sadness, like maybe involving your mom or your parents. It feels like it's an older female. Am I on the right path?
Yes, you are.
Okay. All right. So, I feel like there was either somebody had a cancerous situation or there was an abusive situation, and somebody had to step in and help with your upbringing. There was an older female that changed the path of your life, and it took in a different direction that you...
abusive situation, alcoholic parents, got put into foster care. My grandmother got us, my little sister and I, out of foster care and raised us for a couple years. She's very instrumental in my life.
But there was a loss that other people didn't really know about. Did people know about your abuse in that situation?
Some people. I was adopted as a baby, so I don't know if that is anything.
Well, it just feels like your energy's in a lot of different places. Like you...
Jesus, you know me. No, I'm just teasing.
Well, this is what I feel of other people that I've felt this with. It's like a deck of cards, and it's all spread out, and you've searched and worked on getting it all back into a deck.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
Do you have another job opportunity coming to you?
I don't know.
Something that's gonna, from what you were doing, it feels like there's something that's gonna come your way. Maybe two options of something, like a voiceover thing. Would that be something you'd want to do? Voiceover stuff?
Yeah.
It feels like there's going to be it's going to be like an opportunity. I just feel like either advertising or voiceovers, or you get to choose between two of them.
Yay! We love that. Thank you, Steve.
You're very welcome.
We love choices. The house that you lived in, because there was a lot of spirit activity. You were in Fort Myers, Florida. You still are in Fort Myers, Florida. We're going to take a quick little break. We'll be right back. We are talking to Steve Shankle, who is a hairdresser with crazy ghost stories, but can also see past the veil. He is an energy worker. So, Steve, you're moving to Florida from Nashville.
My friend Andrea helped me move from Nashville down, and I had 4 little dogs when I got here, and we were completely worn out, and my furniture hadn't gotten to the house yet. And we got there at like 3 in the morning, and we were just exhausted. So we slept on the floor on dog blankets. And as we were getting ready to go to sleep, I heard in the hallway like some steps, like boots kind of clunking around. And I looked at her. I said, "Did you hear that?" And she said, "The house is settling." I said, "This house is 100 years old. If it ain't settled, it ain't settling. There's something in this house." So I got up and went and looked, and there was nobody there. And then everything was good for a while. And then when my friend Andrew, we were going to buy some stuff for the house, and there was this girl next door, and she was painting the outside of my neighbor's house. And I asked her, I said, "Do you do interiors?" And she said, "Yeah, I do." And I said, "Well, I just moved in this house. Would you paint?" Because I wanted to do some designs on the wall and blah, blah, blah. And she said, "That house right there?" And I said, "Yeah." And she said, "I don't know. That house is very creepy to me." And I said, "Well, what do you mean?" And she said, I've been in that house before, and I've had some really weird things happen to me.
Ooh.
Well, that's good. So she decided that she would do it, and I was working in a salon at the time, and she was painting in my dining room. She called me late one evening, and she's like, when are you going to be home? And I said, I'm leaving now. And she said, please hurry. Pull up, and she's on the front porch, and she's smoking a cigarette, and her hands are shaking so bad she can't even hardly talk. And I said, what is going on? And she said, I was painting in your dining room, and the water faucet turned on. And I said, no, it didn't. And she said, yes, it did. And she got down to turn it off. She got back on the ladder and painted again. And she said, and then the one in the bathroom came on. And I said, there's no way, because I've never experienced that kind of stuff. And she said, yeah, it did. And she said, I don't want to go back in the house. She said, maybe my boyfriend will come back with me. So her boyfriend came back with her, and they heard somebody say, get out. They had run into my bedroom and locked the door while they were in there. And she was calling me and saying, please come home.
She heard somebody say, get out.
They both did.
Okay, so they both heard somebody say, get out, just like the movie.
Get out.
Please, get out.
But it was just a really loud whisper. They just say she didn't come back anymore. And so then I started hearing, like, footsteps in the hallway, and then I would hear, it sounded like poodles running around up in the attic, and I don't know what it was about the attic, but I would never go up there. I never went up there in 8 years. I would trick people into taking stuff upstairs in that attic for me, because I just felt this horrible energy up there.
You would trick people to take stuff up into the...
Well, I'd had knee surgery, and so it's one of those old fold down ladders. And my neighbor across the street, I said, "Would you take this up in the attic? Because I'm not supposed to climb ladders with my knee."
Yeah, it was really like, honestly, you shouldn't be up on that weird ladder and be in your attic.
Yes, that's true.
I can't believe that you stayed in that house for 8 years.
Well, and the weird thing about it is, I kind of felt like they were roommates after a while. I know that sounds bizarre, but there were so many of them and so many things that happened that I finally said, look, you can stay here, just don't touch me or my dogs. And I couldn't very well move because I was renting there, and they were nice enough to let me have 4 dogs in that house. What else was I going to move 4 dogs? I was kind of stuck.
You never heard anybody whisper, get out?
No, never did.
Okay.
So then I was going to Orlando one weekend, and my friend Joseph, now I never told anybody about what was going on, or I would never get anybody to stay there. I asked him if he would come and watch my dogs. I was gone for like 3 days, and then like day 2, the night of it, he calls me, and he's like, when are you coming home? And I said, well, I'm coming home the day after tomorrow. And he's like, okay, there's some weird stuff happening in this house. And I said, well, I'll be home soon. So when I got, I didn't hear from him anymore, but when I got home, the front door was unlocked. All the TVs were on. His clothes were on the floor. His dog was still there. There was poop and pee everywhere. I'm like, what is going on here? So I called him, and he's like, are you home? And I said, yeah. And he said, I'm not coming in that house. I'll pick up my dog, and I'll meet you, bring my dog to the porch. So I did, and I said, Joseph, what happened? And he said that the final straw was he was laying in the bed, and I had a little bar area, and I kept a soft light on just so I had to get up and go get water or whatever I would see. And he said that he heard a really loud noise, and he looked up, and there was a shadow standing in that doorway. And he said he got up, and the dogs were barking, and he watched it go across the living room and out the front window.
Whoa.
I said, what? And he's like, yeah, it happened. Said, that was it. I'm not going back in that house. I left all my clothes, even left the dogs. No food, no water, poop, pee. And I said, well, you could have called and I would have come home earlier. Out. And he never came back to visit. And that was another thing. On the front porch, me and my friends, we would sit out there at night, and I had little lights that would come on around the porch, and it would cast a light on the other end of the porch. And you could see the shape of a man standing near one of those lights. And one of my friends, he was like, do you see that man standing right there? And you could see the shape of him, and then he would just kind of dissipate. Then I started thinking, I need to put some video cameras around here just to see what's going on. And my front porch was screened, and it had a lock. And I put camera facing the screen door when you come onto the porch. And the first night, I think it was New Year's Eve, pop-up came up on my phone, and it said, person detected on front porch. I looked out. There was nobody there. So I watched the video. And you could see, and I still have the video, you could see a mist going across the porch, and it was kind of a thicker mist, and it was probably about 3 feet long. And I was like, what is that? So I sent it to my friend Amber. I said, do you see that mist? And she said, you got bigger problems than that mist. She zoomed in and took a screenshot, and you could see a picture of the shape of a young boy standing in the screen on the outside. If you looked even closer, you could see, somebody's calling me from your 512 number.
Calling you?
512-722-3266.
Yeah, that's me. Oh, that's really
wow,
weird.
Isn't that trippy?
That's really trippy because I'm the only one, and yeah, I'm the only one on right now, and I'm not calling you.
See?
That's trippy. Oh, this is good, my friend. Oh my God. So it just started ringing.
Yeah, it said, it had your...
My studio.
Yeah, and then it said incoming call, and then it has that number.
512
722-3266.
Yeah, that's our studio line. Steve, kind of creeped out right now, and we're talking about your ghost stories, and now, wow, that's interesting. And
Did you hear it beeping?
no,
Did you hear it beeping?
no, I couldn't hear anything. I thought, what are you talking about? And I'm looking, and there's only one studio line on right now.
Somebody had come in there and saw where I had called you, and they were calling me back.
There's no one here. And we've been on the phone for a good 40, 45 minutes or something. That's bizarre. So this is you're intriguing to me. You're so intriguing because this kind of stuff happens a lot to you, doesn't it?
All the time. Anyway, back to the video. If you got bigger problems than that miss, you see that little boy, and here's another thing that happened in this house. The neighbor next door, she was a little cuckoo, but she was funny. And I lived there probably for a year, and maybe 2. And she said, do you ever have anything weird happen in that house? I'm like, what do you mean? And she said, of course, I said straight up, what do you mean? And she said, there was a lady stabbed to death in that house. I'm like, what? And she said, yeah, there's a whole news thing about it. She told me the story. So the guy that owned the house, he would go downtown and pick like manpower or whatever, guys that were waiting in the parking lot to get a job or a day job or whatever. He would go down and get them to do cheap labor for him. And there was a lady living there. This guy saw her and started stalking her. And he was painting the house or whatever. One morning, maybe around 5 or 6, she was up doing her laundry, and that guy came in the back door and started stabbing her. There was a huge fight. The neighbor that told me this heard it. He grabbed her car keys and ran out the front door, and she met him out in the driveway, and she said, what are you doing? And he said, me and my girlfriend just had a fight, and I'm leaving. And she said, you don't live here. Well, of course, then the police came, and she came in, and she had called down the hallway where I heard all those footsteps, passed away. I have a picture. My friend Amber, I had gone to bed, and my friend Amber texted me. I saw them the next morning. She was like, are you out on your back porch? Because there's a light that keeps flashing on and off. Probably 4:30. Okay. So she had taken pictures, and you can see a woman. You can see the shape of her. She has on a white dress. And Amber said, I had to go inside because she just kept standing there staring out at me.
Okay, so Amber was your neighbor, and she saw this.
So she was taking a picture of the light flashing because there was a bright light. And you could see, I've still got it on my phone somewhere. And then while the light was on, you could see the woman had long dark hair. You could just see a white place where her face was. You couldn't make out any features. And she had on a white dress, and you could see a white light. But stuff like that happened all the time.
When you looked up this story of this woman, photo of her, did she have dark hair?
No, I never saw her.
Mm.
Another trippy thing.
Yeah.
So I hired this guy to put wallpaper in my bedroom. And we were talking, and from L.A., and come to find out we knew some of the same people from L.A., blah, blah, blah. And he said, my ex-wife was stabbed to death down here somewhere in this neighborhood. I don't know which house it was. And I told the person's name that did the stabbing. He literally dropped the roll of wallpaper and ran out the front door and got in his van.
No, this was the house that his ex-wife that he did not know was stabbed in? Steve, how bizarre is that?
Isn't it? He sat out in his van for a few minutes, and I went out there. I said, "Are you okay?" And he's like, "That just tripped me the hell out." And I said, "Well, welcome to my world." They had divorced, but yeah, it was the same house.
And you were in this house for 8 years. Feel like you felt her.
Yeah.
Did you feel others?
I never really was scared in that house because everything else that I'd been through with dealing with spirits and everything. So I was really kind of used to, I don't hate to use the word used to them, but, I kind of knew how they worked, so to speak. The only time that I was ever really scared, my screen, it was late at night, and the screen was locked so that nobody could get on the front porch. My dogs started barking, and they jumped off the bed, and they ran down the hallway, and they were barking rather roughly. Then they started backing up, and I thought, oh, God, whatever this is coming this way. So I just froze. I literally froze. I could not move. Then they jumped on the bed, and they were staring at the door, and they were barking. And then, Tanya, I was right on the street, so the street lights from the street were casting into that window. And I looked out my bedroom window, and those Amish kind of flat brim hats.
Mm-hmm.
I could tell that he leaned in to look because the shadow got darker, and I could see his ears, and he just stood there for a few seconds and stared in my window, and then I heard boot steps, and he backed away.
And he was outside on your first floor?
He was on the front porch.
Oh, he was on the front porch looking in your window.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah. Then another time, one of my clients, a young guy, I was cutting his hair, and he kept turning his head and looking in the living room. Now, mind you, I don't tell my clients this because I don't want to scare them off.
Right, this is your bread and butter. Just come on into the creepy.
Right. Yeah, they're good people. So he kept turning his head, and I said, if you don't stop moving your head, I'm going to cut your ear. And he turned and looked in the mirror, and his eyes got, no kidding, as wide as they possibly could open. And he said, dude, there's a man standing right behind you over there by that shelf. And I turned and looked, and you could see like a shape of a mist, and the same thing. He was shorter, had that same kind of hat on, and he just stood there for a second, and then he turned and walked down the hallway, and you could hear the boot steps as he was going down the hallway. That kid, he went and told his mom about it. He was in high school, and she called me, and she's like, what's going on over there? So that was another reason I never tell people.
So these spirits never really communicated to you. They never said, can you help me? I'm looking for someone. Put me into the light. Anything like that?
No, they didn't. But I could feel their energy, and I could feel that they were just lost, and they were just stuck here. And so a couple of friends and I had like a little ceremony, and we told the other lady how to release them. And she told me, she said, this is what you need to do. There for a while, the energy got lighter in the house and everything, but then it started getting the same way again. It was like a whole new shift come in.
The spirits are like, hey, it's down there on the corner. That dude can help you.
Third house on the left.
Yeah.
And then when that all stopped, and I've got this on video, I was laying in bed. It was a Saturday morning, and I kept hearing this click, 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 click. And I thought the refrigerator, because it was near the kitchen, I thought the refrigerator was going out. And I was walking into the kitchen, and I could still hear it, but it wasn't there. And off the kitchen, I had a little room that had the bookshelf with different little memorabilia things that happened in my life. And when I moved from Nashville, I had a little box that had a lid on it, and it was the first thing that I ever bought for my little house in Nashville. And I thought, well, I'm going to keep that. Well, the lid on it was vibrating. I can send you the video, and it's going click, 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 click.
Wow.
And there was no way that there was no vibration, that I didn't live near a train track. And after it was over, I touched the lid and tried to make it go up and down with my finger, and it couldn't because the lid fit perfectly. And I even said in the video, there's no train, and I took the phone and went around the room. There's no train. There's no ceiling fan on. There's nothing that would cause this. And then I turned it back toward the box, and it stopped. And I said, and just like that, it stopped. And I never did it again.
Did you open the box to see if there was something?
There was nothing in the box.
Wow. So something was moving it on its own.
Yeah. They were.
Whoa. Now, you're in a different house now. I have heard that the spirits...
They attach themselves.
Yes, they attach themselves to you, or they attach themselves to items. So now you're in a different
Like
house.
furniture.
Yes.
Yeah.
So tell me, is there anything now happening in your life, or not really?
Well, just recently, I had a girlfriend that was staying with me from Ohio, and we were standing in my room, and I have a large fish tank, and she was standing over looking at the fish tank, and there was the loudest whistle, and both of us jumped, and the dogs even kind of jumped, and I was like, "What was that?" And I said, "You heard that, right?" And she said, "I'm not hard of hearing." So we got up and we were looking around the house, and there was nothing, but it was loud, and it was in my room. And so that was one thing. And then I had another client. We were sitting in the kitchen, and she was standing against the counter on one end, and I was at the other, and we were talking about something. And I walked her to the door, and when I came back, 2 cabinet doors were wide open. I was like, I know that I didn't open those. And if they'd have been open, I would have seen them because it was right where she was standing, and she would have been, her head would have hit the door. So I know that those doors weren't open. I was like, well, there's that. So I just pushed them closed, and I've not had anything like that since. My neighbor back at the old house, before Ian hit, he was stage 4 cancer, and he passed away the week before Ian hit. And she kept saying, do you think you can make contact with him? Does he come to you in your dreams? Or can you just try to tell him I love him? And I said, he knows that, Amber. But anyway, so I was in bed, and I was thinking about him. And I've got this on video, too. My curtains are those, they're like linen, and they have the lining on the back for the sun. You can block the sun out. They started blowing away from the wall. And I thought, he's there, and he knows. Like, she lost everything in the flood. She had a newborn baby, and he died the week before Ian.
Aww.
So she was just searching for answers, and she needed some help. And I thought, well, let me see if I can do anything to help her get some kind of... And so I just started thinking about him, and I started telling him in my head that she misses you, and she loves you, and she just wants you to know that. And I looked up, and those curtains, now mind you, they're heavy, were kind of blowing back and forth away from the wall. And I was like, you're here. And I grabbed my phone and videoed a couple of seconds of it and sent it to her.
Aww.
She said, I feel so much better.
Just some of your stories have helped people, just like you doing the grief counseling, or, the connection that you were doing with people. I mean, those things have helped people. And you're this energy worker who is not really truly practicing. I mean, your hairdresser is your other side gig, but you're an energy worker, really, truly. I mean, you're one that walks among us on this earth. It sounded like it gave her a lot of.
She never mentioned it again, and I could just tell in her voice instantly that she had found what she was looking for. It's such a good feeling to know that it's something that's small, and if I can do anything for people, that I feel like that's why I'm able to do this. I'll tell you this one real quick.
Yeah.
So this lady that she was introduced to me just through text. I never really spoke to her. Through this guy named Charlie that I would read his cards occasionally, and he said, I've got a girlfriend in south of England. She is into this kind of stuff, and she's always looking for guidance and that kind of thing. And so she sent me a list of questions, and I know some of them she already had the answers for, and I think she was testing me to see. And I got all those right, and then we became kind of pen pals through text and stuff. And she sent me a text one morning, and she said, my family needs your help. Can you please help us? Her father had fallen out of a window, and he laid on the ground, and he had passed away. And they didn't know what happened, and they needed to know what exactly, if I could tell anything, because they're just clueless. So she sent me his picture, and I worked on it for a couple of days, and I came to the conclusion that he had a little bit of Alzheimer's, and that he didn't really know where he was, and it was at night, and the windows were open, and he just stepped out. But there was a lady there, and I actually got her name. I said, she's not involved in this, and I know that it seems like she is, but she's not. And I know that her son, and I remember his name was Joseph, he's not involved either, because they were trying, I found out later that they were trying to prove that the man had some money, and actually he was a duke, and they were trying to prove that those two had done something to get his money. But I didn't know that at the time. And I said, there's something with a sword that he sleeps with it under his bed or is in the bed beside him, and he was some kind of general or something. And so I told them the whole story, how I saw that it happened. And she texted me 2 days later, and she said, they have released that lady, and that your story goes with the coroner's report. Oh. And she sent me a big basket from this big department store in Harrods, and it was full of all these little goodies and stuff. And she said, you have really helped my sisters and I, because we were ready to have that woman arrested for murder.
Wow. And that woman was probably very happy, too, because she didn't do anything.
Right, yeah, she had no part of it. She was like his caregiver, so she slept downstairs and he was upstairs.
Yeah.
And they thought that since he was the Duke of whatever, and they thought that the son, and they had plotted together and pushed him out that window. But I don't know how all that worked or whatever. But that wasn't true.
But you saw the truth, which is fascinating. I do want to go back to something that we never really talked on. You had helped people, some missing persons.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about that.
When I lived in Tennessee, one of my clients, he worked for the sheriff's department, and I would always tell him little things about some of the cases that they were working on or whatever. And he asked me, would you ever be interested in, if we needed some help, would you help us? And I said, well, I don't know how much that I could really do, but I would try. And so there was a big case in Tennessee where this girl was disappeared, and they found her stabbed somewhere off the interstate, and it went into a cold case. And so another friend of mine had mentioned it, that they were talking about that case again, and the guy called me and said, well, could you possibly help us with this? And they sent me her picture, and I told them there was a big pond, that they would find evidence there about her. They wouldn't find the body. I felt like the body was owned down by the trees, but they never found the body. But they did find like her shoe and her necklace and stuff where I said it would be. And so then there was another case that was outside of Nashville, and then there was another case in Memphis where this older man had gone missing. He had gone to the gas station to get gas, and he was not seen from for 72 hours, they said. So they had known, somebody in the Memphis Police Department had known about me helping with that case, and they wanted me to see if I could help with this one. So this one I did with my tarot cards, and because I didn't feel like he had passed. And you can ask tarot cards certain questions, and it will help with directions and that sort of thing. And so I felt like near Mississippi, because it was in Memphis, down an old road in this warehouse, and there was a lot of smokestacks, and they would find him in a car at the end of this road, and there would be this African-American lady there with him. And so they went, and they pulled down the road, and they didn't see his car at first, and they went around to the back of it, and there he was. He had run out of gas. He didn't know where he was at. The African-American lady had come to help. He had Alzheimer's, and he was lost, and they found him in his car. He didn't know where he was at. He had no money, had no ID on him, because he just went to the store to get gas. She was protecting him.
Tell me really quick what happens with you when you tapped into the missing person, the cold case. Is there something physically? I know you said you do some tarot cards. Do you feel stuff, or does it just come out as a movie?
It comes out like in a case like that. There again, I have to see the picture. But when it's a case like that and there's actually a body, it comes in little snapshots. Like there would be a picture of, say, the expressway, or there would be a picture of a pond. And then sometimes this other girl I helped find, I actually got the street right, but I didn't get the house number right. She was in a basement that she had run away from home with this older man. It's either like a real short movie, a little snippet, or I hear the word.
Interesting.
not as interesting as your phone number coming in here a few minutes ago.
I know, that is why that trips me out too, right? That's an interesting one because nobody, if the studio picks up our line, I can hear it. So there's only one line. And nobody's using it because there's nobody. Isn't that interesting? Steve, I love that you've shared so many wonderful stories with us. You're fascinating. Thank you so much for looking at my photo, giving me clarity on my childhood, which was right on, the clarity on some stuff that's going to happen. So I'll let you know.
Thank you very much.
Because I think you're just a beautiful human to this earth, to everyone.
Thank you. That means a lot. Thank you very much.